Welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witness leadership that they are living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. I'm your host here, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and a kid raised as a Jehovah's Witness in the 70s and 80s, as I like to do. Just a bit of a trigger warning. We try to have some fun here, try to heal, try to be educational. Sarcasm, humor, experiences never meant to offend. And I might just say extra trigger warning this week because it's a highly sensitive subject for most people. We are completely jumping the tracks this week. And from the outset, I want to say that I have no idea where I'm going with any of this, but it's more of a mishmash of several thoughts, a stream of consciousness, and a bunch of discoveries and stuff I've read all colliding into a giant brain soup. So just note, this may not make sense to you, but it does to me in some weird way. Maybe you can help me figure out what I'm trying to say here, but as always, I'm not going to count on it. I present to you something I was reading earlier this week, a subject that I was reading about and researching. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Is anyone else familiar with this? And as is noted, I'm fascinated by such things, all things human behavior, and wouldn't you know it, after doing a deep dive on the Dunning-Kruger effect in some odd way, it led me to at least one example that applies to the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. If you listen and you're here regularly, you know that I'm often dumbfounded. I'm dumbfounded, especially lately, on how ignorant and infantile and flat out creepy this cult has become. I tend to relate it to the gross lack of intelligence found among the 11 men that lead the organization. If it isn't gross ignorance, it is an even grosser lack of self-awareness. But enter this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect. Allow me to explain by first defining what the heck the Dunning-Kruger effect actually is. According to the Journal of Experimental Psychology of 2019, on page 148, we are told the following, quote, "The Dunning-Kruger effect is a type of cognitive bias in which people believe they are smarter and more capable than they are. Low ability people do not possess the skills needed to recognize their own incompetence. The combination of poor self-awareness and low cognitive ability leads them to overestimate their capabilities," end quote. And I'm here telling you on this crazy show, I think I have a real-world example of this. The basic idea behind the Dunning-Kruger effect is this. If you don't know something, you also don't have the ability to recognize that you don't know it. The term lends itself to a scientific name and explanation to a problem, I guess I should say, that many people immediately recognize. That fools are completely blind to their own foolishness. It's highly likely I will return to mentioning the Dunning-Kruger effect more in the future, especially when it comes to all things Jehovah's Witnesses, particularly the leadership. And as anyone that's been a Jehovah's Witness knows, they're borderline helpless without the direction of the governing body. And I recognize that sounds like I'm insulting them, but I promise you I'm not trying to. I used to be one vast majority of my life. Jehovah's Witnesses are conditioned weekly to rely on everything and anything that the governing body tells them. The vast majority will seek answers to some of life's most mundane questions by turning to what comes natural to them. For an outsider, though, this may sound humorous, well, because it is, but in reality, Jehovah's Witnesses have been trained to do this. It comes down to this. I'm wondering if the toilet paper roll should be over the top or underneath. I need to know just the best way to load a dishwasher. What color can my hair be? What should I eat? And on it goes for a witness. And for those that know, you know I'm right. How does all of this tie into what I was learning this week about the Dunning-Kruger effect? Well, I'm glad you asked. Despite the vast majority of mankind being able to make, I don't know, their own decisions or actually reason on things, the governing body has trained Jehovah's Witnesses to be wholly dependent on them for some of the most ridiculous things or questions you will ever confront in life. All of this despite the fact that Heaven's 11 not only have no right to give other people direction, but also that they believe they're very intelligent and that they're personally chosen by the creator of the universe to hand out answers on, well, anything and everything. Am I right? And folks, I have an example this week. An example so ridiculous, I just couldn't pass up the opportunity to share it. But before I launch into the subject and into their counsel on it, I'll just say this for anyone that thinks I blew by it. The toilet paper roll should be rolled over the top, not on the bottom. Come at me, okay? And by the way, I also like pineapple on some of my pizzas. There you have it. I say it far too often on the show, but once free of their mental prison, you can't help but stand back and marvel at their ignorance. And the feeling, at least it's me, of secondhand embarrassment at watching a group of men think they're leading all of mankind through a massive genocide and into a paradise earth. But here we are. And now for the example this week I speak of. We're digging into the treasure trove of printed advice available in their library, often found on the last page of the Watchtower magazine, a little section called Questions from Readers. My kind of people, I might add. I want to issue a trigger warning at this point again, as this particular entry and subject can really, really upset most people. And I just want to say it from the beginning, I get it. I understand. Here goes. Are you a pet owner? Do you have a family dog? Do you have a cat? Like I said, an emotional part of life is the family pet. And it's always a very, very serious subject for a lot of people because your pets are like family. It is very important to the pet owner. I want to add that I don't have pets, but I get the dynamic. I subscribe to the observation that oftentimes our pets even end up looking like the owner in a strange way. I know you've seen this. You're walking down the street. I actually saw this morning on my 3-mile walk. A woman with auburn red hair walking her Irish setter. It was wild, and I laughed. So, okay, you've been warned. But from the questions from the readers, Watchtower of June 1st, 2003, on page 31, Jehovah's Witnesses were treated to the following question from an anonymous reader, along with the governing body's answer. Here's the question, folks, June 1st, 2003. Quote, is it wrong to take the life of a very sick or old pet? End quote. You can't be serious. Are they serious? Yes, they're serious. As my mind often does, I wondered how this hit the radar in 2003. Like, what made them think what? Especially when I considered there were far more challenging things going on planet Earth in 2003. For example, just one, according to the Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, there was an estimated 25,000 human beings that died daily from starvation and malnutrition, again in 2003. But not a word about that from the faithful slave. They decided to dedicate page 31 of the June 2003 Watchtower to answer the pressing question, what do I do with an old pet that is suffering? Imagine believing that Jehovah's Witnesses actually needed their thoughts on this. I'm not kidding. Imagine. But here we are. As always, what follows is, in my opinion, the Dunning-Kruger effect. A group of men claiming they have something to say about something that falls under the heading of, I don't know, common sense, kindness. How about humanity? Even as the rest of us can blatantly see their ignorance in action by dedicating a page of the Watchtower to a common sense question. This question from readers begins with this, quote, most people find various animals a source of interest and enjoyment. Some domesticated animals make good companions as pets. For example, dogs are known to give unqualified obedience and affection to their masters. Thus, the attachment that people may have for such a pet is understandable, especially a pet they have had for years. End quote. Understatement. In my opinion, massive understatement. Many people will tell you that their pets, particularly it looks like cats and dogs, at least from where I'm from, mean more to them than most people in their lives. I mean, they consider them family, their kids. We hear, dog moms, and we've heard all the terms. And I have family like this, by the way. An estimated 68% of U.S. households have a pet. That's how big they are. We have entire movies about messing with somebody's dog. I'm looking at you, John Wick. Not to mention that trauma many of us still deal with if we were kids and we watched Old Yeller. Or how about Bambi? And don't get me fired up about The Lion King. I don't want to go into the trauma I still deal with when I hear the name Mufasa today, okay? Pets are a very big deal. So thanks for recognizing that, future kings of the universe. According to Aaron Heck, director of the Canine Brains Project in the Department of Human Evolutionary Biology, we are told, quote, scientists think that dogs probably domesticated themselves. That's wild to me. Quote, nobody really knows for sure, but the current thinking is that there were probably wolves that were hanging around human settlements tens of thousands of years ago. Well, that goes against the government. Never mind. And the wolves that were less afraid of humans and could make humans less afraid of them were able to obtain survival benefits. End quote. But put that all aside, folks. Please, governing body, carry on. This article from the Question from the Readers continues with this warm and fuzzy counsel, quote, however, the lifespan of most pets is not very long. Dogs may live for 10 to 15 years or so, as many cats, depending on the type. In old age, pets may suffer sickness and disabilities that can be distressing to their owners. Who remembers the younger and more active years of these animals? Would it be wrong to put such animals out of their misery, to put them to sleep? End quote. It is incredible to me that this article saw the light of day. But folks, you'll be glad to know it was nothing more than a retread of the same question. What a coincidence! That had also been featured in a 1977 question from the readers. Wait a minute. Somebody wrote in 2003 without looking in the library to see that it had already been answered in 1977? No, they can't possibly be running out of material to cover page 31, can they? It looks like they were running out of questions from the readers. Not sure, folks, but they rolled it out again in 2003. And I'm on record here as saying I highly doubt any Jehovah's Witness actually wrote into the organization wondering if it's okay to put their suffering pet down. I just don't believe it. But as is the case with the governing body, they, for some reason, felt the need to micromanage even your pets and their lives. Apparently, this was really weighing on Jesus' mind, even as the generation of 1914 was passing away in 2003. I mean, quote, hey, we need to comment on people's pets. Okay. But if you really want to have fun, governing body, and I can't encourage this one enough, you'll have an entirely new view on all things Jesus Christ and that same governing body if you take the time tonight to look up the following in the Watchtower Library. If you've got a pencil, jot this one down. It's the Awake of September 8th, 1985, pages 26 through 27, with the aptly titled article, They Call Me Man's Best Friend, a spiritual feast from the faithful and discreet slave. Folks, it's an entire article in the Awake, written from the perspective of a dog. I'm not kidding. A dog. And to think we all dedicated our lives to this organization. Yeah. While I won't go into this stellar piece of literature from the faithful slave, I'll give you a teaser on what the dog had to say in the September 8th, 85 Awake. Oh boy. The dog writing this article begins it by saying this, quote, They call me man's best friend. Well, many call me that. I hope my family agrees. I adopted this family when I was a puppy, only 6 weeks old. And now, by their own admission, they would be at a loss to know what to do with me, a sentiment I heartily agree with. And why not? We dogs are loyal to our adopted family to the end. Man cannot say that. Pay close attention, quote, We never come home drunk, never get mad, never hold a grudge, and even though you may beat us, which you should never do, a pat on the head will cause our tail to wag and let you know that all is well between us. However, my life is not all roses. One thing that confuses me is when I'm punished. If, for example, the door of the house is accidentally left open and I run out, when it's discovered that I'm gone, I'm angrily called back. Then, when I come back, I'm punished. Why was I punished for coming back? Then I bend over and lick my ass. Oh, nope, sorry, I added that part, end quote. I mean, what did I just read from the 1985 Awake? Good things don't get drunk. I mean, good dogs, nothing. Good dogs don't get drunk? Well, that's good to know. I mean, you can't say that about several members of the governing body, including one of their presidents. Judge Joe. What? What did I just read in the library? And is now a good time to mention that the guy responsible for giving us the dogs that don't get drunk, you know, my guy Noah, let those dogs off the ark and, well, this is awkward. He proceeded to drop trow, get naked, and, well, he got drunk. He got real drunk. His sons got to see his nude. Oh, man. Wait, is the dog writing this Awake article taking a shot at my guy Noah? Come on now. He better not be. There'll never be Noah slander on this show. The damn dog only exists because of my naked, drunk friend Noah. And why would a dog that could write an Awake article, of course, under the direction of Jesus Christ, ever be confused by punishment for escaping out the open back door? You can write spiritual food, but don't understand you can't run wild in the neighborhood sniffing other dogs' bums? What? Imagine what happens to this Awake author when he takes a shit on the living room carpet. It's gotta be bad, but wow, huh? The Awake, September 8th, 1985. Spiritual food at the proper time. And that whole Dunning-Kruger effect be damned. This organization, in just mere seconds, is back to talking and even writing animals. Talking and writing animals. Isn't that something? I'm going to walk up to the next dog I encounter and ask them if they ever use such words as, what was it here in the Awake? Sentiment and admission. I've never heard a dog say those things, much less write them. And to think I gave up on my dreams of signing animals and all of that stuff with Pumbaa and Timon and the Lion King. Who knew? Go check out the 1985 Awake article, folks. It's gold. I gave you a snapshot. And I warned you at the outset. I have no idea where this is going. I'm off track again. Let's get back to the wisdom of the 2003 Question from Readers article. Can I put my dog down if they're sick or old? It continues with this. And remember, Jehovah's Witnesses reading this Watchtower are supposed to believe that someone out there, one of their brothers and sisters, was actively seeking Jehovah's view on putting a sick pet down. It continues with this, quote, a Christian would want to act in harmony with God's will when dealing with animals. Cruel treatment of them is certainly against the will of God, for his word states, the righteous one is caring for the soul of his domestic animal. However, this does not mean that God views animals in the same way he does humans. When God created humans, he showed that there was a clear distinction between them and animals. For example, he gave humans the hope of everlasting life, but he never extended this hope to animals. Being the creator, he has the right to designate the proper relationship between humans and animals. Genesis 1:28 tells us what the relationship is. God said to the first humans, have in subjection the fish of the sea. I got to tell you, I always love that one. Have you ever seen a fish in subjection? Let me know when you find one. Back to the quote, and the flying creatures of the heavens and every living creature that is moving upon the earth. Similarly, worst word ever, Psalms 8:6-8 says, everything you, God, have put under his man's feet, small cattle and oxen, all of them, and also the beasts of the open field, the birds of heaven, and the fish of the sea. End quote. Wow. First, I just want to say, before I go a second deeper into this, I meant to say this earlier, it is absolutely disgusting in any way, shape, or form to treat an animal cruelly. It is sick. It's beyond words sick. Most would recognize that any human that mistreats an animal poorly is deeply disturbed and highly likely to be one of those people that escalates how they treat other living creatures right onto other human beings. It is a huge red flag. I'm going to steer clear of anything regarding animal testing, ethical slaughter, etc. I'm sure we have some vegans and vegetarians, on and on it goes. Let's focus in on this wisdom from the faithful slave. So, however, I'm going to say that the governing body aren't exactly experts on how to treat animals, folks. Where do they get off talking about animals? Okay. But even more bizarre is that they thought this was a subject that just needed, it was begging to be covered. Because apparently people don't know what to do with a suffering animal. With that said, the paragraph I just wrote to you from the question from readers, I want to reiterate the important line. It said, quote, a Christian would want to act in harmony with God's will when dealing with animals, end quote. Well, as you might imagine, I have a few questions about that bold statement. And it starts with the idea that God's will regarding animals is easy to define at all. Why do I say that? Well, we can only assume that the governing body believes we can learn God's will for the animals by, opening his book, the Bible. And I got to say it, folks, and I don't know how to say this. How do I say this? We should all be very grateful for my guy Noah. Without him, we would have no animal kingdom, making his year, or maybe even longer, of wading knee-deep in animal urine inside a box all the more worth it. We got animals now. We got pet dogs and cats, thanks to him. But aside from that, are we really sure that we want to follow God's example with how he treats animals? Are you sure? For example, consider the first time Jehovah decided animals, well, they're just not as important as people, meaning he was absolutely okay with killing them. Jehovah's will, as this question from reader says, for animals didn't last even 3 full chapters into the Bible. Would you like proof? Consider Genesis chapter 3 and verse 21 of the New World Translation, where we are told, quote, and Jehovah God made long garments from skins for Adam and for his wife to clothe them, end quote. Yeah, there it is. There it is. The first 2 animals bit the dust early in paradise, and keep in mind, Adam and Eve weren't even respecting the animals by eating what was left over. They couldn't do that yet. They were still vegetarians. Jehovah just needed to kill a couple of animals because he needed something to cover over the first 2 humans' junk. Apparently, Jehovah has never seen Naked and Afraid, by the way. What a bizarre show. You wouldn't be surprised, or I should say you would be surprised, what you can cover with just a couple of leaves and some sticks. We see it on Naked and Afraid, but not Jehovah. Let's kill some animals. But this isn't the half of it. It looks like the governing body, when saying consider God's will for animals, I don't know, they go on to miss a few more factoids about how Jehovah has treated animals in his book, the Bible. At Joshua chapter 6 and verse 21 of the New World Translation, we're told, quote, they devoted all that was in the city to destruction by the sword. Man and woman, well, there goes some people, young and old, huh? Wait, bull, sheep, and donkey, end quote. Wow. We're slaughtering the people, we're slaughtering babies, we're slaughtering the old folks, and we're slaughtering animals. Just one of several examples, I might add, from the Bible of what this question from readers says is Jehovah's will towards animals. And don't give me the religious affiliation stuff. He does it again when King Saul slaughters the Amalekites, Only Saul really messes up. He apparently liked his pets or his animals. We know the real deal, okay? But Paul goes into the Amalekites, slaughters everything in sight, but he decides to keep a few animals. Where the Bible then tells us that Jehovah's so pissed off at Saul for keeping the animals alive that he sends Samuel to take Saul's crown and give it to David, a guy who got tens of thousands of people killed but got off. It's a whole other story. Because Saul saved these animals and Jehovah wanted them all slaughtered, Saul got his ass kicked. That's in the Bible. But we are all treated to this question from the readers in 2003, discussing how we should treat a sick family pet that needs to be euthanized. You know, in other words, at least from where I sit, a prime example of the Dunning-Kruger effect in action. Why are they doing this? But the article continues with the next paragraph, where the all-wise faithful slave says this, quote, God made it clear that animals could be properly used and killed by man. For instance, their skin could be used as garments. Yeah, we saw that 3 chapters in. Back to the quote, God also gave permission for humans to eat the meat of animals. It always does, folks, after the flood of Noah's day. My guy, supplementing the diet of vegetation they were originally given, end quote. First, hilarious. Meat was a supplement to the veggies. Okay, I won't go there. But all of this leads a thinking person to consider what the animals were created for to begin with. You remember in the Garden of Eden, where a talking animal screwed all the rest of us hard, we're still feeling it. He gave them permission to eat the animals later? Why? Why suddenly, after my guy Noah had done so much, built an ark, been laughed at, lost a book card or two, maybe lost a finger or two trying to grab a shark, after Noah saved them, now we can kill him and eat him. Why wasn't this allowed before? I mean, there was a lot of animals on the earth. And I mean, Jehovah was the first to kill animals to cover human junk and boobies. Then we get this from Genesis chapter 4, verses 2 through 4 of the New World Translation. Who could forget this? Quote, Abel became a shepherd of the flock, but Cain became a cultivator of the ground. After some time, Cain brought some fruits of the land as an offering to Jehovah. But Abel brought some firstlings of his flock, including their fat, while Jehovah looked with favor on Abel and his offering. End quote. What? So bizarre. Early on, and what Jehovah's Witnesses call Jehovah's original purpose, Jehovah loved himself the plant-based diet program for his humans. So Cain, seemed like a pretty good move, brings him a basket of fruits and veggies. And the Almighty turns his nose up at it. Why? Were they not ripe? What was going on? Then we have Abel. He is apparently, outside of his parents' clothing, among the first people to slaughter animals. Why? We're not sure. Something about Jesus' ransom sacrifice and stuff. Don't have time. And we assume burning their fat. You know, he killed them, lit them on fire, burned their fat, because the Bible tells us Jehovah loves the smell of fat burning. Unless you're a middle-aged guy in upstate New York looking at those governing body physiques. Sorry, low blow. But nonetheless, Abel is killing and burning animals 4 chapters into the Bible. He just can't eat them. Really making you wonder where barbecue comes from and stuff. Never mind. Here is this article in 2003 telling us that we want to emulate, quote, God's will when it comes to animals, including the family dog and cat. And you should do all of that based on how, well, Jehovah has treated animals in the past. And where do I even begin? I know this is controversial. I'm going to stick my toe in it. Where do I begin on a God that for some reason, when he wants to make this whole ransom sacrifice his son thing, decides the best course of action is to require animal sacrifices? That'll teach him. Yeah, I mean, it couldn't have anything to do with all the other pagan nations that were doing that all around the Israelites. No way. No chance. They didn't just steal that, did they? Time doesn't even permit me to go into how they symbolize Jesus' perfect sacrifice and stuff. But the only really question I want to raise here is why? Really? This is the best, the smartest being in the universe and beyond can come up with? Why do animals, other living creatures, have to die as some sort of a symbol of your son's sacrifice? Am I the only one that's ever thought of this? Nonetheless, you can put animal sacrifice in the same bucket with God's will for animals. I mean, I don't even have the time to get into. We need to slaughter innocent animals to remind people they're imperfect. It's just, hopefully someone else out there has contemplated this. Yeah. Why did Jehovah dig killing animals, and why did he love smelling their burning flesh, particularly the fat? If you don't believe this is true, check out Leviticus chapter 4 and verse 31 of the New World Translation, where God's will for animals includes this, quote, "He will remove all its fat, just as the fat is removed from the communion sacrifice, and the priest will make it smoke on the altar as a pleasing aroma to Jehovah. And the priest will make atonement for him, and it will be forgiven him." End quote. This is the precursor to the Traeger, I think. I'm not sure. But again, this is an early indication that Jehovah, the great invisible Almighty, somewhere out there just beyond a skyscraper or something, he's got a nose? Like he's pleased by the aroma of burning animal flesh and fat? I don't know, folks. I just lifted it from the Bible. Then there's Leviticus 3:16 of the New World Translation, where we get, quote, "The priest will make them smoke on the altar as food, an offering made by fire for a pleasing aroma. All the fat belongs to Jehovah." End quote. Well, is now a good time to bring up Mark Sanderson? Okay, that wasn't necessary. I apologize. We all have a few extra pounds. It just blows my mind that there hasn't been a deeper dive into this whole concept of Jehovah loving a pleasing aroma. I mean, that doesn't even remotely resemble the pagan gods that were surrounding the Israelites, right? Right. All we're told is that when it comes to God's will in animals in the Bible, Jehovah loves himself some fat. No clue what fat has to do with Jesus' sacrifice, but as a guy that eats a carnivore diet, I am strictly carnivore, I get it. I just find it odd that Jehovah puts so much value on it, animal fat, like all the other pagan gods. Jesus always, by the way, always looks like a runway model in the Watchtower or in the new movies coming out of New York. Of course, he also has an Australian accent, so there's that. It's all very confusing to a Jehovah's Witness. Animal fat burning, Jehovah's got a nose, he likes the smell. This is all about Jesus' ransom. Wait, Jesus always looks like a Greek god. What? I don't know, folks. I'm out. All I want to bring up here is this article. I just want to put my loving dog that means the world to me out of their misery. And I need to go to the Watchtower library. And it says to follow God's will with animals, and he required animal slaughter for the better part of the Bible. And by the way, here is the governing body right on time to make it all seem like it's a really great thing. From the November Watchtower 2019, page 23, paragraphs 10 and 11, under the aptly titled article, Lessons We Can Learn from the Book of Leviticus. Jehovah's Witnesses learn this. Quote, Lesson 3, third lesson. Out of love, we give Jehovah our best. Jehovah viewed the fat as the best part of an animal, end quote. Why? I mean, that's a pagan. Never mind, back to it. Quote, he also specified that vital organs, including the kidneys, were of special value. So Jehovah was especially pleased when an Israelite voluntarily offered vital organs and the fat to him. The Israelite who made such an offering demonstrated his deep desire to offer the very best to God. Like those communion sacrifices, our service to Jehovah is a voluntary expression of how we feel about him. We give Jehovah our best, and we do so because we love him with all our heart. End quote. Oh, yeah. Just like all those animals he had slaughtered for every reason under the sun. You see, standing in front of a book cart is representative of you slaughtering animals, taking their kidneys, burning their fat, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And man, did they do this a lot back in the day. In the Insight on the Scriptures, Volume 2, pages 525 and 526, you get a rough idea of what Jehovah's will was for animals. I mean, it's not very rough. It's pretty straightforward. And it's really weird that this is seen as an honorable thing. Here is just a sampling from the Insight book, Volume 2. Occasions for burnt offerings and their features. We've got 1, regular times offered, every morning and evening. It's a lot of dead animals. Every Sabbath day, more dead animals. First day of the month, Passover, and 7 days of festival of unfermented cakes. The animal count's growing. Day of Atonement, Pentecost, more deadies. Each day of festival of booths, lots of dead animals. Other occasions, don't forget these. At the consecration of the priesthood, let's kill some animals. At the installation of the Levites, more dead livestock. In connection with making covenants, more dead animals. With communion offerings as well as certain guilt and sin offerings. I messed up, let's kill some animals. In performing vows, I promise to do this. Looking at you, Jephthah's daughter. I wonder what animal got saved on that one. In connection with purifications, we kill more animals. That's right from the Insight on the Scriptures book, folks. Stubbing your toe, kill an animal. You farted at the book study, kill an animal. You stared a little too long at that Israelite girl's ass, kill something. You got it, kill a sheep. Jehovah digs burning animal flesh, especially the fat, though. Just wanted to call that out. God's will for animals. But again, trying to get myself under control. Sorry. We're looking at the question from readers from 2003. All of this because our family dog is really sick and hurting, and we adore them. Should I put him down? Will the governing body give me permission in the Watchtower? We're all hanging on their every word. And so the next paragraph from the men suffering from Dunning-Kruger effect tells us this, quote, this does not authorize the wanton killing of animals for sport. Have they read what the Israelite? Never mind. Quote, at Genesis 10:9, the Bible describes Nimrod as a mighty hunter. But the same verse says that this put him in opposition to Jehovah. End quote. We've got some dumb stuff here. I don't think that's why Nimrod, never mind. Staying on track here. Nimrod has entered the chat on all things family, pets, and stuff. And you remember Nimrod, right? Nimrod, incidentally, was my guy Noah's great-grandson. But more importantly, Nimrod was living proof that Jehovah he isn't the best at making long-term plans for mankind. Jehovah misses some details. I don't want to distract you from your family pet's pain, but well, it's going to get more awkward in here. You see, Nimrod lived just after Jehovah had already drowned all the animals, aside from the ones that were on my guy Noah's ark, proving that his genocide of babies, human babies, puppies, baby deer, birds, and more, it didn't have the impact Jehovah thought it would have on man. Despite all of mankind, aside from 8 people who are still washing their clothes after a year of sitting in animal sewage at sea, and the entire animal kingdom being drowned because Jehovah was mad at man's behavior, not even the animals, he killed them too, but he was mad at man's behavior. Well, enter Nimrod just a few years later, according to this reference. That mass drowning apparently didn't even make a deep impression on man because mankind, including Nimrod, just 2 generations after my guy Noah, was back to being really bad again. That whole worldwide flood thing didn't make a very good impression on future generations. Drown all the animals, they shrugged it off. And Jehovah doesn't like skyscrapers and stuff. Again, see Nimrod. Oh, and all the languages we have today are because of, see Nimrod. But look, when you're writing a question from the readers about euthanizing the family dog, you gotta throw in a reference to the mighty hunter Nimrod, while ignoring the fact that Jehovah was killing far more animals than anything Nimrod was doing. And by the way, since this is the most random podcast episode ever, why not keep it going by reminding everyone that guess what? Guess what, folks? All the clothes these people were wearing from Noah to Nimrod were courtesy of animals. They were killing animals and making clothes. So please, tell us again how Jehovah's Witnesses want to act like Jehovah and emulate his will when it comes to animals. You're a Jehovah's Witness. You're watching the family cat in terrible pain. You can't make a decision for yourself, so you go to the Watchtower library. Or worse, as they want us to believe, you sit down and take the time to write a letter to world headquarters to ask the faithful and discreet slave what to do about Tabby the cat. You then apparently wait months, maybe even years, until they decide to answer your letter on page 31 of a random Watchtower, as the cat continues to suffer in terrible pain. But when faced with the counsel of the governing body on all things pets, you have to wade through everything I've shared here only to get to the final paragraph of the 2003 question from the readers. Are you ready, folks? This profound question from the readers ends with this, quote, "Thus, while man has dominion over animals, he should not abuse that authority, but use it in harmony with the principles of God's word." End quote. For a moment, I just gave you the principles of God's word. He slaughters animals at an alarming rate, folks. Back to the paragraph, quote, "This might include not letting a pet suffer needlessly because of very old age, severe injury, or terminal illness. In such a case, it is the Christian's responsibility to decide what to do. If he decides that it would be merciful not to let a pet continue to suffer without any reasonable hope for recovery, then he may choose to have it put to sleep. End quote. Gee. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your permission on what to do with the family pet. Or is it your blessing? I don't know. You're telling us we may choose to do the humane thing. Are you telling that's because that's what Jehovah did? I got a counterpoint or two. Needless to say, how joyful we should all be that Jesus and the governing body took time out of their busy schedule during the last days that never end in 2003 to let us know that we can be like Jehovah. That he gives us permission to kill animals if we think it's a good idea. For those wondering, you do not need to take time to search the Bible for that time Joshua wanted a dog and he visited the Humane Society in Jericho. It's not there. But as always, the Bible, according to the GovBod, can answer any question a Jehovah's Witness poses, thereby allowing them to remove their brains, put them in a mason jar by the front door. But before I end this, and I know it's crazy, and I leave this whole subject of pets and stuff, how about a return to a favorite segment that comes and goes on this show? A few random thoughts and nuggets of truth you can only find in God's true organization. When you can't think for yourself, you need an organization to think for you. Here are a few of my favorite random references. The first one, from the January 22nd, 1993 Awake, Does Your Child Want a Pet? Under the subheading, Teach Children That Pets Are Not Humans. We get this, quote, As children's affection for a pet deepens, care needs to be taken so that they do not go overboard and begin to treat their pet as a fellow human or as having human qualities or levels of understanding. This would cause unnecessary trauma when the pet grows old and dies or perhaps is killed in an accident. Of course, this is not something that only children have to be taught. Some adults also need to be careful in this regard. In some cases, the pet is fondled and treated as if it were a baby or a small child. Children may be quick to emulate things they have observed some adults doing, lavishing affection on their pets. So we need to keep a balanced view of pets and teach our children likewise. Help them to see that pets and all of God's animate creation are here for man's pleasure and use. But we must be careful never to elevate the animals and birds above the role that God intended them to have. End quote. What the hell am I reading? Who wrote this? Can you imagine the judicial meeting? Hey, listen, Brother Smith. We as an elder body have heard several reports of your son, young Timmy, giving his puppy too much attention. We believe he's learned that from you. You give the puppy too much attention. You seem to be enjoying walking that dog more than you enjoy going out in field service. You seem to be elevating your dog Fido into a place that's really inappropriate, Brother Smith. Does he sleep on your bed at night, Brother Smith? Does Timmy see that? He's treating his puppy like a little baby, fondling him and stuff. And we all know human babies are enemies of God anyway, so this puppy love stuff is highly immoral, Brother Smith. What in the hell? How do these articles see the light of day? How does this stuff get proofread and put out into the world as food at the proper time? Awake, January 22nd, 1993. Read it after you read the Awake article written by a dog. I mean, it's really deep stuff. But folks, hold on tight. It's about to get better. Oh my. From Bible Questions Answered, page 159, the article, oh wow, wait, is this for real? Yeah, I'm looking at it. An article titled, "Do Animals Go to Heaven?" Yes, I'm serious. I want to add, well, no, but they got a better shot than human babies do. We are told this by the Dunning-Kruger effect. Sorry, the governing body. Anyway, it answers that compelling question with this, the Bible's answer. Quote, the Bible teaches that out of all the creatures on earth, only a limited number of humans will go to heaven. They go there to rule as kings and priests with Jesus. The vast majority of humans will be resurrected to life on a paradise earth. There's no mention in the Bible of a pet heaven or dog heaven. Kind of like there's no mention of a paradise earth where billions will live forever, but don't get caught up in the details. Back to the quote, and for good reason. Animals cannot take the steps needed to qualify for the heavenly calling. These steps include taking in knowledge, exercising faith, and obeying God's commands. Only humans were created with the prospect of living forever. End quote. Oh my. Look, the governing body and the 144,000 don't want anybody stealing their heavenly spotlight. Sure as hell not your pet parakeet or your fishes. Leave your fish tanks on earth, folks. Those damn pets aren't getting into heaven, and neither are the vast majority of humans. You can all live together, humans and animals, on a paradise earth. We don't clean up dog doo-doo in heaven. No chance. Okay. My final random thought from their library, not to be outdone by all the wise counsel aforementioned, is the reminder that you shouldn't get too fond of your pet. They're not worthy of that kind of emotion. From the Awake of February 22nd, 2004, pages 6 through 9, the series Pets. Keep a balanced view of them under the subheading Problems with Pets Today. We're told, quote, the rate at which pets reproduce is a problem, especially evident in cities. It has been estimated that 17 million dogs and 30 million cats are born in the United States annually. Millions of these end up in animal shelters, where each year in that country alone, an estimated 4 million to 6 million are euthanized, put to death. End quote. And as I read that one, do you mean like that time Jehovah killed all the animals at a flood? Or are you referring to that time King Solomon was dedicating a new temple to Jehovah and slaughtered a whopping 142,000 animals because, again, Jehovah digs himself the smell of burning fat? Was it that time? I mean, I'm glad they aren't doing this at Kingdom Hall construction projects these days. Okay. Oh. And with that, I'm done. I'm sick of myself. All of this using their book, their library, to answer a question: should we put the family dog down its suffering? The governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses somehow feels the need and the God-given right to comment and direct every decision a Jehovah's Witness may face in life. And they've always done this. This week, for whatever reason, I wanted to tell you this extends even to your pets. You'll never look at the dog or cat the same way again. But back to the Dunning-Kruger effect and my favorite 11 men in upstate New York. How did they develop this problem? Why does it seem to be getting worse? including in recent years how and where you can shave your body, how and what you can wear. How is this getting worse with these guys? Listen up. From Psychology Today, April 24th, 2026, on the Dunning-Kruger effect, under the subheading, Why Do People Fail to Recognize Their Own Incompetence? We are told, quote, many people would describe themselves as above average in intelligence, humor, and a variety of skills. They can't accurately judge their own competence because they lack metacognition, or the ability to step back and examine oneself objectively, huh? In fact, those who are the least skilled are also the most likely to overestimate their abilities. End quote. I might know 11 guys. This, by the way, is followed in the same Psych Today article by the following subheading, Why Do People Think They Know More Than They Do? Which tells us, quote, one type of overconfidence, called overprecision, occurs when someone is exaggeratedly certain that their answers are correct. These individuals may seem highly competent and persuasive due to their apparent confidence. They are often driven by a desire for status, and power, and the need to appear smarter than the people around them. End quote. I know some guys. Jehovah's Witnesses live in an interesting world. And it seems appropriate to do what I often do as I conclude these crazy shows by mentioning a quote that came to mind. As Charles Darwin, that guy, evil man, wrote in his book, The Descent of Man, he said, quote, ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. End quote. And so this week, we learned of the Dunning-Kruger effect in New York. Nothing is off limits, even your pets, to the 11 would-be kings in upstate New York. I'm just left with one question. Where is John Wick when you need him? I want to thank you for joining me this week and putting up with my nonsense. Go take the dog for a walk and be well.